Right, welcome back everyone. Time for the final session of day one. And this is, I promise you, this is going to be a good one. We've got a great panel for you to round out day one of DSP Leaders World Forum. This is the first of two vertical market panels for this year's event. And we're starting with Automotive, the SDV globalisation gap, that software-defined vehicle. And there's going to be some terminology we're going to be using that is probably unique to the automotive sector, that is different or not known to telecoms. But it's an interesting mix, and we'll develop this conversation as we go along. And if there's any questions, and I'm sure there will be questions from you in the audience, we will come to you and incorporate as many as we can. So, software-defined vehicles promises continuous feature upgrades and new revenue models. But the business case doesn't really stand up when these services can't be delivered consistently across markets. We've developed this panel in association with 5G AA, and the information we've got tells us that most OEMs, and OEMs are car companies in this context, yeah? So it's different context. Most OEMs deploy connected vehicle services in roughly 50 first-tier countries, while the SDV ambitions target about 140 or more markets. Big difference there. But fragmented connectivity models, eSIM lifecycle complexity, compliance requirements, there's uneven regulatory environments, there's a long list here. And these create like a globalisation gap that can turn this one SDV vision into dozens or more of incompatible implementations, which obviously we don't want. So we're going to meet our panelists. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and then Maxime will say a few words. So let's introduce our panelists, and it's a welcome return to Colin from my far left. Colin.
Good afternoon. My name is Professor Colin Lee, Queen's University, Belfast, and I also work for JLR, clearly. I look after the VCDP, which is a Vehicle Connectivity Data Platform Strategy, and or V2X technology, which is where I guess where my 5G AA board membership comes in that respect. So that's me.
Excellent.
Yeah. Hello, together. André Schlufter, my name. I'm with Cubic, and we are providing global connectivity solutions that we are probably talking about today. Previously, I was leading connectivity for German car OEM, Porsche, so I know what the other guys are talking about.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Patrick Jambard. I'm working at Orange Business Services, and I'm leading the connected car vertical in order to deploy our connected and digital services across the world. And I'm also coming from the automotive industry, having worked for Toyota, Voisin, and Stellantis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Camille. I'm Director of Software Engineering in General Motors. So I'm on the technical side, and I'm responsible for carrier connectivity for all our vehicles globally. So that's a small car park of more than 20 million vehicles.
Great.
Great vehicles, too. Hi, everyone. My name's Craig Turner. I'm responsible for the in-cabin experience and middleware product lines at Aptiv. Aptiv is a global technology provider, heavily rooted, of course, in the automotive industry, but also addressing a variety of other vehicles together with our partners at Wind River, and then across things like drones, robotics, and other up-and-coming industries.
Great, thank you.
And Maxime Flament from the 5GA. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, and my role is to herd the cats sometimes, and so making sure that the automotive talk to the telcos and telcos talk to the automotive.
Great, well, good to meet you all. Maxime is our DSP co-host for this session, so I'm going to ask him to take to the podium, if you can, and deliver our DSP Leaders Address.
Thank you very much, and thank you also TelecomTV for the invitation. 2 years in a row, actually. Last year we were also in this in this panel, and we also in 2024 we started, or actually TelecomTV started this channel that is called Autos or Telcos and Autos, so which I invite you also to look at. We as 5GA, we try to contribute to this channel with different members contributing and being then interviewed. Last year we were only 3 persons in the panel, and I'm very happy that this has expanded. Many of our more than half is actually coming from the 5GA, and this really shows that the topic is getting more and more important. Last year we were talking about cross MNOs, so cooperation, cross borders, non-terrestrial network we talked about. This year, I think we really targeted something much more exciting, and it's two issues: on the software-defined vehicles on one side, and then the global connectivity. And the reason we did that is that at 5GA we did our homework. Let's say we have a different project inside the organization. And we bring the, as I said earlier, the automotive sector and the automotive sector and the telco together, make sure that they understand each other, talk about what is really, what are the real pain points in terms of deployment, but also in terms of standardization or in terms of also policy making, and then eventually try to come up with common understanding. And on SDV front, we came with conclusion that definitely connectivity, if we want to have a global scale, connectivity needs a new paradigm, and that paradigm is being created by the likes of Camara, for example, with programmable APIs or API-driven platforms that then guarantee that we don't have only connectivity as a coverage, but then have connectivity continuity in terms of services. Now, the original title of the session was much more alarmist, because we think that we are not there yet, and that's why we have this panel. And so I'm very happy that we end up with this. Now, perhaps a quote is that now, most of the vehicles that you have out there are on permanent roaming, and roaming is great. I mean, everyone enjoys it when he's traveling abroad. But roaming is working for connectivity, but it's not working yet for services. And we have to make sure that at the end of the day, the services that are run inside these vehicles are served well in any countries. Thank you very much.
Maxime, thank you very much. You know, I said earlier there's some connected themes at this year's event, and we've had a few mentions of the sector already today. I think Andy in the previous panel mentioned connected cars, and then Neil reminded us that telcos and the car sector need to understand each other better. And then earlier in the day, I think Warren was talking about data center on wheels analogy. So this kind of permeates through a lot of the discussions we're having this year. But I'd like to start, if I can, because you mentioned 2 issues, and the first being the global connectivity. So if we can start on that one, is global connectivity now an integral part of this SDV platform, or are OEMs, the car companies, still treating this as a country-by-country procurement exercise? What has to change? What has to improve for connected vehicles not to stall beyond the obvious sort of first-tier country markets? How do we push this, or how do you push this and extend this, telcos and automotive? Patrick, can I come to you first on this one and get your view on how we can perhaps start to achieve this?
Yeah, so we see a lot of changes in this market. So it was not a country per country sourcing, it was more regional per regional sourcing, in fact. And now that we are increasing the globalization of the vehicles, as you have vehicles produced in one country, for example, in China or in Turkey, but who are sold across the world. Now you have software-defined vehicle, you have the electric vehicle who is coming, the dealer network is decreasing, and so now for the car manufacturer, in order to find new revenue streams, the connected services is really key because it's no more the aftermarket. And to be linked to the first customer, who are the rental companies, long and short term, and after that also linked to the users, and in order to sell different kind of connected services, and also be compliant with the different local regulations. Alors you have local regulation in North America, you have local regulations in Europe, and in Europe, per country, you have different kind of regulations. And it's also here where I agree with Maxime. So you have the IoT connectivity in roaming with 901, which is good. It's very working perfectly for basic telematic services. But now, as we are increasing the different kind of models of different kind of owners and users of the vehicle, I have to say that for example, the multiple enabled profile solution is something great, because with on one SIM card you can have several profile activated. So you can still have your IoT 901 for the basic telematic services. Now we have also more and more requests regarding 5G standalone. And that also enables you to respond to the different use case on 5G standalone. But there is no roaming on 5G standalone, so you cannot do roaming. So that means that you need to localize, but you will not put a lot of technologies and hardwares into the vehicle. So yes, with one modem and with one SIM card with a multiple enabled profile, you can start to answer that kind of use cases. And after that, you have another one, because I think that today 60 to 70% in Europe, I don't know in North America, but in Europe are B2B new registrations. Is less and less B2C registrations. So here you have the fleet management who is coming. I will take, for example, a large leasing company. They will not use the connectivity of the OEM because otherwise it would be too much costly. So they will ask to put their own connectivity because they have their own connectivity provider into the vehicle, but they will use the data coming from the car manufacturer in order to do their fleet services, because they are imposed to the car manufacturer to put a telematic box at some point. I think it was 20 to 25 years ago. And now they will impose to the car manufacturer, okay, give me your data, I will pay for it, but I will not pay for the connectivity. Well, of course, they are strong. So that's also, it's something that will help in order to respond to the different kind of SDV and the revenue on top of that. And after that, you have the user of the vehicle willing to have, for example, Wi-Fi hotspot in the car, but he will not pay for that. So he will use the subscription of his mobile phone to put it into the vehicle. So that's different kind of stuff that operators will enable in order to facilitate the car manufacturer to deploy software-defined vehicle across the world. And after that, also to respond to the different kind of regulations that are moving, and also with all the geopolitics today, the different regulation and constraints will also move. And for that, we need to be flexible and to make it easy for the car manufacturers.
Okay, thanks very much, Patrick. Colin, can I come to you next, because you were here last year with us, and we had these conversations last year. Are things changing? Are things changing enough?
Yes and no. So, yes, they are changing. There's a realization that vehicles need to be connected always. I mean, that's very clear. Are we there yet? No. But we're getting closer, because there's other technologies that are now starting to come up in the 5G AA, things like NTN. We've also, as Cubic was saying, about the ability to be able to use cellular in different countries without worrying too much about the regulations, which has always been a burden on us. And we're over-regulated in many cases on vehicles with the data as well. There's lots of other things, I'm sure that will be covered later. But I think what we're trying to do now is figure out how we can exploit all of those coming in. So if you can imagine having a multiplexer coming in with all the different technologies coming in, we're trying to figure out how can we help ourselves to be always connected, because at the moment we're not there yet. So I love what Neil said earlier. you know, working on the black spots, I think is really important for you guys, because as soon as you do that, we won't have to do it. But we're doing what we have to do what we need to do. For things like, for example, receiving diagnostic data to understand if there are common problems. If we need to repair parts of the vehicle, we don't know if we're not connected. We don't know about that. Feature over the air, software over the air. There's lots of various things that we need to do as an OEM that is becoming more and more important for us to have the high quality vehicle that our customers expect.
Great, thanks very much, Colin. Anyone else want to comment on this connectivity?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think you know, you talk about how connectivity is an integral part of SDV vehicle. I would say connectivity is the experience of an SDV vehicle. I don't think you can really separate you know, what we want to offer as a beautiful finished product if you don't have connectivity, because many of the services that we offer within this vehicle require connectivity. And so I think as we've evolved from a need of data that was really supporting telemetry and supporting maintenance, it's becoming really critical now for the quality of experience that we offer to customers. And guess what? We want that experience to be consistent globally. But we have to run that over many different jurisdictions that have, you know, different regulation, different standards, and all the way from hardware, frequency, equipment, to different eSIM technology, to different localization requirements. And to offer that in a convincing and consistent experience for the customer, it's hard. It's definitely a lot of work for us. But,
so it's hard. Maxime, you spoke about, you know, coordinating this activity. What are you doing, you know, with your members and the industry to help accelerate this?
I think André can answer this.
Yeah, so
there we go. That's a beautiful passing of the question.
Yeah.
Come on.
So I didn't mention it earlier, but also I'm Cubic is part of the 5GAA. We are also on the board there, especially to address one work item that we have in the 5GAA, addressing the global connectivity. And there we are dealing especially with the challenges, that pain points that OEMs are expressing today. We have other MNOs in the community there, and there we are trying to bring things together, have an exchange, and find solutions. So, and this is perfect also a spot for us as Cubic, as we are providing these global solutions to the industry. So we are specialized in the mobility sector. So our aim is to provide to OEMs, and as these gentlemen have explained, they want to have a homogeneous experience, basically with one API integrating to us. And we are doing the work, working with the telco community around the globe to normalize this and orchestrate this to make it simple for them and avoiding multiple integrations. So that's the discussion we have there.
Is it? Do you get a receptive audience from the global telecoms community?
Yeah, so we are happy to work with the entire industry. So we are today live or active in 200 markets, and as Patrick also explained, so there's a trend that we go more and more local. Roaming cannot do it, so we are happy to let's say enable all of the telcos around the globe to help to enable the cars of the future. And maybe it's an important tipping point for the telco to see now what is happening. Before, maybe everybody was saying, the connected cars, there's not so much traffic, it's not so critical for the business. But with these SDVs coming on, we see the trend now. They're really kicking off, and data is increasing massively. So we need to look on together also on solutions to have the networks ready for these cars, having quality of service enabled, because I mean, this is getting the third living space for all of us.
Yeah, sure.
Behind home office.
Great. Maxime, want to come in?
Yeah, so, and perhaps one on the process is quite interesting. You know, when, so 5GA is a lot also working on standards and 3GPP, and etc. And so we usually start as a vertical to provide requirements from the automotive. Here, this is another way around. We start with the pain point. And so it's much later in the standardization process, after the standard is done, after the deployment is done. And then we are here standing in a group, telcos on one side and automotive on the other side, and then listing the pain points. And they are one after the other coming up. And at the beginning, we were very shy. we were saying, oh, let's see what happens. But now it's really kicking off, and we don't have the pretension that we are going to answer all the pain points. Certainly not some of the policymakers' pain points in some countries, which are quite challenging. But at least by putting ourselves together and trying to solve this together, we can find a solution.
Good. Thanks, Maxime. Craig, do you want to add anything?
Sure, just a little bit maybe. I don't think I can add much to what all of my esteemed colleagues here have said. They're a lot more experts on the connectivity side of it. As an in-car technologist, first of all, just talking about the SDV, for us, the SDV is really all about separating the hardware from the software. And you put that together with some other evolutions in the vehicle, electrification being a big one, the introduction of autonomy being another big one. You've got a bit of a triple crown of heavy-duty vehicle architecture changes all coming at us. And what we need to handle across doing all of that is still leveraging the potential that each of those things brings. So for autonomy, we need to figure out how do we handle the perception that was coming up earlier, how do we deal with all of the cameras, how do we deal with all of the high levels of compute. Electrification, I think everybody has their experiences with hybrids and fully electric vehicles. But then when we come to the software abstraction from the hardware, the connectivity becomes absolutely critical. As soon as we've done that, the reason we do that, number one, we can optimize on the hardware. We can make the BOM cheaper. We can find ways to combine domains that we otherwise haven't. On the other hand, then we've got software that we can iterate on. And we can iterate at different speeds than we have historically by bringing in full units every time we update something. And so to come back to what everyone has been saying here, yes, it absolutely has to be ubiquitous. It absolutely has to just work from an in-car perspective, because when we're dealing with creating those updates and then applying them across 30 million vehicles around the globe, as the technology partners, we can't really deal with all of the unique regional differences and challenges that come up there and still be able to maintain delivering a consistent, reliable, safe, and verified software experience on top of all of that. So the connectivity then becomes really the heart and soul of actually leveraging what we're enabling by bringing in the SDV.
So if the connectivity is the heart and soul of leveraging this, what are we bringing in? What is a minimal viable SDV technology stack then for global rollout? What are we talking about? And you know, is it the OEMs who own this? Is it who owns it all? It's quite a new and novel to a lot of us here, the SDV concept. So can we go into a little more detail about what we mean technology-wise when we talk about SDV? Whose idea?
I'll start, and then I think there's some answers to more of the details of the question from around here. Maybe actually Maxime owns it because the 5G AA is really a key part of that. Inside the vehicle itself, the fundamentals of what is the minimum viable application is really an abstraction layer that provides that link between the hardware and the software. So that's a starting point. Now, is that sufficient? Of course not, because that doesn't actually enable any of the value that we need to generate. It just provides a playing field that then that software can sit on regardless of what the underlying hardware is. And that's where I would then hand over to the rest of the team here to really discuss what do we need to then start bringing in that software at a high frequency and provide those updates.
Okay, so we've got that abstraction layer. Maxime, do you want to kick off, and then we'll go down the panel for extra comments?
I think Colin mentioned over-the-air updates. That's one of the most important. If you don't have over-the-air update in a secure manner and a reliable manner, and at scale, of course, you don't have SDV. You defeat SDV actually, and so I'm concerned about these cars that are going to be running for 10 years in Europe, for example, and then they're going to be exported in other countries where perhaps there is no SDV support. What's going to happen then? Does that mean that any security gaps are going to be unfulfilled? That's the over the air, and then there are also many different ambitions in terms of. I mentioned service earlier. There is differentiations of services. There are safety services, non-safety services, and these ones that will have to run on the same TCU. So then, how can we across different countries consistently be able to access these different quality of services, and that's not given yet.
Okay. Okay. Colin, you want to come in?
So I just wanted to add to that. Thanks. That's good. What I was trying to cover here is that we make literally thousands of vehicles, and they're set up for certain parts of the world. So you get China vehicles, you get European vehicles, you get US vehicles. SDV really allows us to kind of have an empty phone where we can then add the apps depending on where we're going on in the world. And I think the SDV from an OEM point of view is to really make that easier. We can also personalize the way that vehicle is for people. We can change the capability of that vehicle, like the curves of the acceleration could be varied quite easily. So you can actually pay more money, if you like, for more things. But it's really to try and make life a little bit easier from the OEM point of view. I think that's one side. The ADAS side of things, for the safety inside, will pretty much be basically a great big castle inside. No one's allowed to go. Fortress is the word I was looking for. You can't go into that area because they're going to try and make sure that car's safe and it's going to be reacting to the safety and the environment around it. But when you start coming up the layers and you start having the people inside the car with what they need and their needs, wearables and the kind of equipment inside for the children to watch, for example, at the back. And then you've got us as well trying to improve the importance of the car. Then you start looking at a certain layer within the car where it's almost identical to the outside world in the sense of the areas that you're in. And I do see some, they'd say 10 years down the line, I don't see any reason why a car couldn't actually be like a mobile tower, effectively. I think there needs to be a lot of work being done, but as soon as you've got that, then you've got communications inside a vehicle, and you also got below the ground. And I think and I'm probably skipping a bit, but I'm trying to set the scene as to the SDV was initially there for us to really understand, steer by wire, brake by wire, acceleration by wire. It really does make a lot easier.
Was it about 15 years ago? I'm sure one of the big OEMs was experimenting with this sort of cell on wheels thing, which didn't really get anywhere. But maybe now it's convergence of technologies. We start thinking of new innovative solutions. So it's interesting where we're going to go with this. Patrick, I want to bring you in though.
Yeah, and I think that at Orange Business we have also discussion with Orange Cyber Defense and Orange Consulting on the cyber security topic and on the data trust topic. One thing is that, now OEMs are willing to make a lot of revenues on top of software-defined vehicles, which means that hackers are really interested to hack this vehicle in order to get some money from the OEMs. So that's the first point, is to have partners who are able, and it's part of the stack of the SDV, is to be security compliant, I would say. And also here we can talk about post-quantum cryptography and eSIM cryptography on top of that. The second topic that we also have, which were more coming from the Chinese OEM, is the data trust, which means that in these software-defined vehicles, you are collecting a lot of data that are most of the time not compliant with the local regulation and not compliant with GDPR. I can ask André to give me for a day his Porsche, for example. And the issue is that André will be able to track me on his mobile phone without my consent, which is fully not GDPR compliant. But thank you, André. So that's a topic. So you have the security, not to be hacked, and that all your fleet will be hacked by some hackers, and also the fact that we are developing a software-defined vehicle with a lot of data, and we need to be careful of something that the local regulation can ask you to stop all the activities because you are not compliant. So that's two topics where we also need to focus, which are also part of the stack of the software-defined vehicle.
Great. Camille, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think the consent and the data obviously extremely relevant and important. I'd like to go maybe in another direction here, which is on observability. And I think as, there were a lot of discussion earlier about how to surface data from the telco network and use it to better run your network. we really, I think the partnership between the telco and the OEM is also incredibly important because we need, I think, to understand the telco data and for the telco to be able to surface some of the maybe behaviors that are abnormal in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of data consumption, in terms of quality of service, in terms of performance, and for us to be able to utilize that to provide an optimized experience for our customers. And so I think that that's a huge opportunity that we have, and that's why I'm so glad the dialogue is happening here between the two verticals, because I think the potential of what we can do for the customer is huge.
That's really nicely said, and I think this is a perfect point just to maybe try and go to our audience quickly and see if there's any questions at this stage. Okay, let's start over there.
Thank you, Mike Short. I'm very keen to understand where can customers, in its widest definition, get a roadmap of coverage, by which I would define it as Wi-Fi, cellular, and satellite and GPS. Where can customers get a best idea of the eCall next generation progress? Where can they get the best view of the security roadmap that would suit other sectors, such as the defense industry, the police and logistics industry? And lastly, where would the roadmap most suited to the insurance industry be most visible? There are 4 roadmaps which maybe 5G have started on, but I'm not sure they're visible enough. So,
Mike, you're saying that there's 4 roadmaps there that the 5G has started along?
I'm asking if 5G has started, or if not, when will you start?
Right, thanks. Maxime, are you able to field?
At least a couple of them, but not at least the latter one. For example, insurances, we do not have members that are representing insurances, and so therefore we didn't get into these. But I think you mentioned eCall, and eCall is definitely one of the pipeline that we are pursuing. We are looking very closely at NG eCall for Europe. But also beyond Europe, we want to make sure that the learnings from what we have in Europe are used also in other regions of the world. Now, and the first one was?
Coverage.
Yeah, coverage. Yeah, so you mentioned non-terrestrial network on that. And yes, and I think perhaps should we pass on there, Colin?
Yeah. So we've done quite a few experiments with some test companies. I know JLR did a test coverage with Anritsu to check to see how we as a car deal with when we lose connectivity and when we gain connectivity. Do we click to roam or do we wait until it pops up again? So we've done some initial, what we've been trying to do is get some understanding, and because we're trying to do it politely without saying, oh, we're connected to this MNO and this MNO, unfortunately you guys, you know your black spots. We have to kind of test them and try and figure out what they are, and then try to do something in our car to flick across them to make sure we have the best possible connectivity. I think that's the gap we have at the moment. So we are working on it. I think that's the most important thing. We are talking about this in 5G AA.
Yeah, so if I can complement, we do have a roadmap for non-terrestrial network, so just on that one. But it starts with very rudimentary kind of use cases or services, very narrow band services, starting with emergency call or resiliency in general. But then gradually going, as the technology evolves, going towards wider band services. And that technology is dependent on 2 things, on the standards that are being developed at 3GPP, but also on the satellites that are available or the constellations that are available and that are quickly improving. And for that reason, actually, I think over the 3 last years, we got 6 different satellite operators in our membership. because they all have something to offer, and there are different constellations that can provide different services.
I would suggest you pop over to 5GAA and ask those questions, because that would be good also, if you see what I mean.
Great. Great, thanks. Anyone to add, or we can go to another question from the audience? If you've got another question from the audience, because we've got Robert over here. I think that's all for the time being.
Sorry, Tony. Robert Curran from Apple Research. We talked a lot this morning about collaboration, and it seems to me that this combination of automotive and the whole ecosystem and telcos might have some very interesting collaboration potential, particularly around some of the data that you're capturing. Can you just explain to me how the value chain stacks up and who's likely to be, which direction it's going to flow? I'm thinking of things, very basic things. The kind of environmental information that you might gather in a vehicle as you're going along, air quality, for example, or road surface quality, those kind of things. And if that was channeled back through a telco, that could be resold as information to all kinds of people. Or alternatively, the car providers from a fleet management point of view could monetize that data more directly. Is there an obvious direction for that value chain to function? And is that something that's actually material to the OEMs? Or is that just, kind of noise in the revenue picture?
Thanks, Robert. Colin, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I can say that what you've been asking for there, we've been wanting to do for some time. We do things like air purification. We do also air quality measurements on some of our vehicles. We collect the data, but we can't do anything with it because of GDPR, and we can't do it because we're regulated so heavily without the customer's
consent.
approval. Unlike a phone, where you can pretty much collect the data, we go through so much regulation that we struggle to try and we'd love to share it, we'd love to be able to use it, but we can't always do it. So I'm afraid we're kind of over-regulated to be able to do a lot of things you're asking for. Happy to talk to you offline, but there's an awful lot of regulation around what we're doing compared to, because we're not a consumer product, you see. A phone is a consumer product, so there's totally different regulations for that than there is for the vehicles.
That's great. Patrick?
On our side, we have worked, for example, with Continental in some African countries in order to, from the sensor of the vehicle, to get weather information in order to predict, because it's less costly than a satellite. And in some countries, you are not able to put satellite and in order to get this information. So, and that enables you to get real-time information. We are also, and that's part of the VivaTech events that we are having with Renault, for example. We are also getting this information in France for the moment, in order for weather or for road incidents that we can have. We have some projects where with the cameras, we are able to detect holes on the road, and so to send it back to the data lake in order to inform the other vehicles. So at some point, there's of course GDPR here is really critical, because you cannot send back the VIN number or some identification information, but I think that more and more we will come to this part where the data of the vehicle will contribute to increase information regarding the locality where the vehicles are. It can be road information, but it can be also other kind of information.
Okay, great. Andrew, do you want to come on this one as well?
No, I just wanted to bring similar examples. It's fine. So I think in the industry, we see already that information, like if there's a hazard on a road and so on, this is going to be exchanged already quite frequently and help other vehicle owners already.
So maybe in terms of the question about where the value will end up being captured and these different use cases we're talking about, I think if it's something like weather, air quality, traffic basic status, a lot of these things that we know as V2X applications, the value won't land in the network strongly, because it's just a matter of sending that data somehow to a cloud instance that can be handled somewhere and then sent back as appropriate. There's no time limitation, there's no criticality to it. If we start looking at some of the more safety relevant applications, some of the more autonomy relevant applications, suddenly timeliness becomes critical. So as soon as we start talking about anything that maybe needs a turnaround time of 30 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds, relevant now information rather than aggregated general information, that's where I think the telcos and the 5G network have a unique capability to really provide applications, services, together with car manufacturers, together with the overall technology group and the entire value chain to actually enhance the safety of our roads, because cars are getting very rapidly very safe, but the roads themselves are getting still quite unsafe simply due to the sheer number of vulnerable road users, sheer number of vehicles on the road, some of them autonomous, some of them electric, some of them not. You bring all of that together and being able to then gather through C-V2X, so cellular V2X, over the 5G with the applications running directly in the network and providing low latency feedback to vehicles. You can allow one vehicle, for example, to look around a corner. You can provide information to emergency services, what's happening around them, what's happening at the location of any emergency. And in fact, this even goes beyond these kinds of applications where we're saying cars on streets, because the mobility sector goes beyond that. So we have commercial vehicles come into that. That means trucking, as a simple example. And then even further, off-highway. So you start talking about safety at construction sites, safety in mines, safety in other locations like agriculture where you just have large vehicles moving around somewhere where we can connect them. Now, agriculture gets a little trickier because of the coverage issues that we were talking about earlier, so if we can solve that, adds a use case for me. I think that's great. You take all of that, and then we go even further, right? Drones coming up huge, exact same topic. Similarly, autonomous mobile robots. We start looking into the industrial space. We start looking around the world with smaller vehicles moving around, driving around something that isn't necessarily a road. Suddenly, the applications of a simple technology that will allow us to give rapid, fast feedback, low latency feedback of potentially high volume data, because we are talking about radars and cameras in vehicles of some sort, doing heavy duty detection algorithms to identify and classify objects around them, and then share all of that information with all of the other vehicles. And to make that really hard, we've got millions and millions of these all providing that information, and somehow you need to figure out, is that one person crossing the road that 10 cars are seeing, or is it 10 people crossing the road that 10 cars are seeing? And doing that processing in the network or near the edge to be able to provide that value back to the vehicles will actually be a step function in safety on our roads. And I think that's something where the telcos especially and the overall usage of the 5G network can make a huge difference in road safety, and that's worth doing.
Great. Okay, so a lot of ideas for telcos to take on board there. That's fantastic. Any more comments on this one? And we'll move on. Camille, do you want to add to this, or where the value might be? Or happy to move on because we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left. Yeah. SDV globalisation gap is the topic of this session. So if we are to unlock this scale, if we are to go beyond where we are now and look at the vast potential available to us, what would you say needs to be standardized, or what do you think should be standardized across the ecosystem today to help unlock this scale and move us forward? André, are you able to start us with this?
Yeah, I think it's a good summary of all the topics we addressed here earlier. So it's about to enable global connectivity via SIM management, for example, to enable all the local networks. Then on top of this, then we need to have a common API set to enable the same services on global scale. So we are working on this with GSMA or Camara on solutions for that. But then it's also about how we do analyze for security stuff, the traffic. And then we need to look also into operations stuff like observability that Camille mentioned, because OEMs need to be warned quickly if there's maybe obscure traffic increase happening due to OTAs that are failing or whatever. So there need to be standards be deployed, and then it needs to come probably also to kind of service level agreements, because OEMs, they want to make sure that customers, to the point earlier maybe when coverage is not good, so that it is always on the car in future. So there are these topics.
Great. And from the OEM perspective, is it important that we increase the standardization across these components?
It's really important. And I think, we talk here about geographical reach, but I think beyond geographical reach, it's also about providing the best service, which means really having all of the different networks and all the different MNOs collaborating. So when I think about, launching in one new market, it's not just adding one MNO, it's really looking at all the MNOs that can provide service in that market. And there's great technology out there with 5G SA and traffic prioritization. But for us to use that, we need a consistent and standardized way to access these services, because we may accept customization in our biggest market, right? If I'm dealing with North America, yes, I might go and do that one-on-one with an OEM, an MNO. But I cannot do that globally. So it's really critical for us that some of these new features and capabilities that the telco industry is offering is packaged or accessible to us in a standardized way that we can easily deploy at scale.
Great. We're going to extend another 5 minutes because this is a great conversation. And we'll go to Colin in a minute, but Maxime.
But I just want to compliment on that one, because it's not only knowing what is going to be available, but when. And when is we need a 3-time lead time to just a 3-year lead time to understand and to prepare what are the products that are going to come and be embedded in the cars. So yeah, a roadmap from the, and I think that GSMA Open Gateway is one of the body that would do that the best.
We'll integrate this into one of tomorrow's sessions because we're looking at APIs tomorrow, so we'll bring that one up. Colin.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things it crossed my mind, possibly as part of standardization, or at least working together, is as SDV vehicles have APIs, then there's a lot of virtual testing that can be done, not only within the vehicle, because that's one of the things we really like about SDV, is that you can literally have a server on your desk and you can have all the necessary APIs for each of the ECUs inside the server. And you could literally do millions and millions of tests to make sure that you've tested everything like software and so on. But as soon as you then start having external APIs and how you then connect the outside world to us, and do they work? And then going through yourself to other parts of the world, do they work? And I think testing could be one of the areas that could be covered here on regulation.
Thanks so much, Colin. We've got a couple of minutes left, but I do want to round this out by just trying to get a view of, what does it mean for the telcos? Because if we look at, say, a year ahead, and Patrick, maybe I could come to you first as our telco on this stage. How do telcos benefit? How will telcos benefit from global SDV deployment? What's really the benefit, and what's in it for the telco?
It will not only be the big increase of data, but of course we are interested in the big increase of data, but it's more also how we will help to facilitate the deployment of this software-defined vehicle by solving the different pains that the car manufacturer will have in the different countries or in the different technologies. Is also to bring more security, as I said before, on the cryptography. That's also another thing. And it's also, so now we are talking about software-defined vehicle. A software-defined vehicle does not start at the dealer. It starts in the factory. And it's how do we help with the mobile private network, the in-factory provisioning, how do we help OEM to help this software-defined vehicle to born in the factory, to be tested, to test the different profiles that you will need for the different markets and for the different businesses and use cases. That's the first topic. We also talked about, okay, we need to identify people, we need to be GDPR compliant. So the data trust behind that, and the telco is really expert in data trust because we are watched every time by the different regulators. So here's how will we help the OEM to implement the solutions that we have implement already in our business to be implemented in the connected car business, in the smartphone on wheels business. That's another thing. And of course, as we are securing our network, it's how we will help the OEM to secure his network. I like to say that the telco is the new network of the car manufacturer. Because we are helping to be connected to the different businesses and use cases. Before it was a physical network and the physical dealer. Now we are the new network of the car manufacturer. It's how we will help to secure and to ease that for the business.
Fantastic. And Maxime, let's wrap this up. How should telcos collaborate here best? What role should they be playing?
Perhaps I think the first. I mean, I can come back to my earlier comment. There are a lot of pain points. And so there was a lot of promises with 5G, and the 5G networks have been deployed. And there are these list of pain points that are being outspoken now. And I think that it is the right time to just look at each one of them and then see, is there a possibility to find a solution at a global scale so that the vehicle manufacturers feel confident about connectivity and bringing that in 150 countries plus.
Great. Thanks very much, Maxime. That's all the time we have for this session. We must end it there, unfortunately, but what a great discussion to close out our first day. If you could all stay seated for a moment whilst I read out a few announcements, and we also do need to check our progress with the audience poll that's been running. But for now, round of applause for our guests, please.